Hello everyone, today I'll be reviewing All the President's Men. So All the President's Men was directed by Alan J. Pakula and stars Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman, and it focuses on two journalists investigating the Watergate scandal. So if you know anything about history, you will know that the Watergate scandal was a political scandal in the 1970s which led to the resignation of US President Richard Nixon. And this film really focuses on these two journalists played by Redford and Hoffman who are investigating it and trying to find out exactly what the scandal involved and who was responsible. So we follow throughout this film lots of interviews with lots of different people to try and find out the answers. Robert Redford plays Bob Woodward and Dustin Hoffman plays Carl Bernstein, and these were two real journalists who were investigating the Watergate scandal. So right at the start of this film we see a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters, and the burglars are arrested and they go to trial. So Bob Woodward goes there and he finds out that the intruders were actually working for the government, and this whole scandal actually might go higher than originally thought, that it possibly could go all the way to the top. And throughout this film we see Hoffman and Redford, they interview lots of different people and there are lots of different names floating about, and they try to piece everything together to work out who was involved in this corruption and what exactly was taking place. This was the first time I had ever seen this film. I'd heard of it before, but I'd never really bothered to watch it. So I decided to watch it, and I found myself quite engrossed within the film, but at the same time I did find it fairly hard to follow because there are so many names involved in this film. So when you're watching this film, you get lots of scenes with Hoffman and Redford in the office. They might be on the phone, they might be talking to someone, and the person on the other side of the phone might say a name, and they'll be jotting the names down, making notes and trying to piece all these names together to find out who was involved and who knows what during the scandal. And this is what I found quite confusing about the film, is that there's lots of different names floating around and you can't always put a name to a face. And sometimes when I interview someone, I almost forgot what the name of the person was and what aspect of the scandal or what part of the scandal they relate to. At the same time, I think this was part of the intention of the film, is to show how confusing, how tiresome being a journalist during the Watergate scandal is, and that it was not an easy job. It was quite repetitive and it was a very difficult job. And the film does a very good job of that, because there's lots of shots in this film where it feels quite cluttered, and some of the dialogue is spoken quite quickly. They do tend to mumble quite a bit, so it makes it quite difficult to understand. But that is just because these journalists are working very hard and they want to get to the answers really quickly, and they want to know whether they can publish this story and whether they have enough information in order to do this, to make sure that everything is correct and they can put the story out. So I didn't mention that the two journalists work for the Washington Post, which is a very well respected newspaper, and another character in this is Ben Bradley, who is played by Jason Robards, and he actually won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in this film, and he gives a very good performance, or is a bit more of a tired character who wants a story done, but he wants it done correctly. So you have Hoffman and Redford chasing around for all these clues, trying to make sure that everything is correct. And one of the things that is in this film, which is quite clever, we get some shots which are, half of the shot will be in focus and the other shot will be out of focus, and it all depends on the perspective. So we might have a shot with Robert Redford on the phone, which is in focus in the foreground, and then on the other side of the shot we'll have it in focus in the background where there's lots of other characters, and this makes it quite difficult to focus on what's going on. And this was the idea, because Robert Redford is on the phone to someone and is trying to work out what they're saying. He actually has his hand over his ears at one point because there's lots of noise coming from the other side of the office. And this really makes us as the audience feel involved in the film and feel as if we're also struggling to understand what's going on, and we want to know the answers. We want to know who is involved and we want to know who is telling the truth and who is lying. There is an interesting character in this film known as Deep Throat, who is played by Hal Holbrook, and he's a character who always appears in the dark. He wants to be unidentified, but he is an insider, so he knows lots of information. So Bob Woodward is trying to get lots of information out of him, and Deep Throat basically confirms or denies what Bob Woodward has found out and lets him know whether he is correct or not. This film doesn't really focus on the private lives of Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. It really just focuses on their professional lives as newspaper journalists. And this is probably because the film doesn't really have time to focus on their private lives, because these two journalists are so focused on this story regarding the Watergate scandal that they don't have time to do anything else. And we often actually get a few scenes where Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, they're in their flat and it might be late at night, or maybe one of them might still be working at the office, and it looks like they don't have any free time at all. They're almost spending their whole lives and all of their time working on this story and trying to find out the answers. And this film does a very good job of showing how difficult and how time consuming this job must be, and trying to find out the answers is not an easy task for these men. So All the President's Men, wrapping up, I think it's a very good political thriller. There are lots of tense moments in this film, and the film does a very good job of showing how difficult it must be to get this story on the Watergate scandal. I'm going to give All the President's Men a rating of 8 out of 10. I think it's an excellent thriller. I would give it a higher rating if I found it a bit easier to follow, but I have actually read other people's reviews, and lots of other people have also said that they found it quite difficult to follow as well. So it might be one which might require a second viewing depending on how you feel about it. If you enjoy it, obviously there's no need to watch it again, but if you want to brush up on a few things, perhaps it is worth watching again. So there we go. So that is All the President's Men. So what do you guys think? Have you seen All the President's Men? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Please let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.